April 25th, 2010, is a quiet Sunday morning in St. Paul, Minnesota. Heidi Firkus and her husband Nick have no idea that the day will soon end in disaster. At 6:31 a.m., the police receive a panicked emergency call. Heidi is distraught and reports that someone is breaking into her house. Seconds later, a shot is heard. Shortly thereafter, her husband reports that Heidi has been shot and he himself has been wounded. This marks the beginning of the investigation into one of the most heinous crimes of recent years. And the question quickly arises: who is the perpetrator? And was the real motive for the crime perhaps quite different from what was originally assumed? In April 2010, 27-year-old Nick and 25-year-old Heidi Firkus live in a small house in St. Paul, the capital of Minnesota. Except for rare complaints about noise pollution, the couple's neighborhood is peaceful and quiet, and they feel safe there. The two are considered a loving, religious couple. They met at church and have been married for over 4 years. They appear happy to their friends and family. Nick works in his father's upholstery business, while Heidi works for a financial services company called Securion. Neighbors and friends describe them as friendly, quiet, and unobtrusive. On April 25th, 2010, the couple's life changes forever when the police receive an emergency call at 6:31 a.m. The woman on the other end of the line sounds panicked. It is Heidi Firkus. She says someone is trying to break into her house. During the call, a loud bang is heard, followed by a scream. Then the connection is lost. The police try to call back, but Heidi does not answer the phone. But just 65 seconds later, another call comes in, this time from Nick's cell phone. Nick sounds hysterical and reports that a burglar has broken into their house. Both he and Heidi have been shot. The police arrive shortly afterwards. The front door is open. There are several bullet holes in the kitchen door, and Heidi is lying on the kitchen floor. She's covered in blood, and it is already too late to help her. Nick is crouching next to her. He's crying and has a gunshot wound to his leg. His shotgun lies next to him. Nick is taken to the hospital. He states that he heard noises at the door in the early hours of the morning. He reacted immediately, went to the closet and got his shotgun. Then he woke Heidi and told her to get dressed because they had to flee. On the way to the garage, a strange man suddenly appeared in the hallway. A fight ensued, and the man snatched his shotgun, causing a shot to be fired that hit Heidi. Nick himself was also shot during the fight. After that, the perpetrator fled and Nick called the emergency services. The investigators had their first doubts after Nick's initial statement. However, they could not have anticipated what they would soon discover. Nick describes the intruder as a black man wearing a dark hooded sweatshirt with the hood pulled down low over his face. He cannot provide any further details because after the first shot, he was only concerned about Heidi. Police dogs are brought in, but they are unable to pick up a scent. There are no other signs of a break-in, and no foreign DNA is found. There are bullet holes in the door, but apart from that, there are no signs of a struggle. Nick says he has no enemies. No one who would want to harm him or Heidi. During the interview at the hospital, the police asked the usual questions. Were there relationship problems, an affair, threats? Nick denies everything. He says he loves his wife and that apart from a few debts, there were no problems in their marriage. But it is precisely these debts that arouse the investigators' interest. A closer look reveals that the couple's financial situation was disastrous. They had bought their house in 2007 for $215,000. Since September 2008, almost 2 years before the crime, they had not made a single mortgage payment. Foreclosure proceedings had already been initiated in 2009. The house was foreclosed in June of the same year. The final eviction date was set for April 26, 2010. That was just one day after Heidi's death. Nick had even called the law firm handling the case and claimed that his grandmother was dying in order to get a postponement. A white lie that couldn't help him anymore. Neither Heidi's family nor friends knew about the impending eviction. But not only that, Heidi herself apparently knew nothing about it either. She had even talked to friends shortly before about wanting to contact a real estate agent soon to sell the house. That had been Nick's idea. All the mortgage documents were in Nick's name. All the reminders, all the legal documents. That way, he was able to keep everything secret from Heidi. There also seemed to be no plan to leave the house. No boxes had been packed, and there was no indication of a move. The further the investigation progresses, the less credible the story of the break-in becomes. The shotgun used to shoot Heidi belonged to Nick himself. This means that the intruder would probably have had to enter the house unarmed. While Nick had only a superficial wound on his leg, Heidi was killed instantly by a shot in the back. Their neighbor, Brent O'Connor, later recalls hearing an argument that morning before the shots were fired. Nick later has a sketch made of the alleged burglar, but there is no one who fits this description. Nick still seems to be the only one with a motive. The eviction was imminent. Nick had even signed a court order stating that any items left behind could be destroyed. And Heidi knew nothing about any of this. He had seemed very indifferent at the court hearing. He had probably already made up his mind by then. Nick had told Heidi that they had been victims of identity theft and had lost between $180,000 and $200,000 as a result. That was also a lie. Heidi believed him and had no idea about the truth. There are no concrete clues pointing to a burglar, no suspicious traces, no witness statements, no one who saw a man fleeing the scene. Even the dogs that were brought in on the morning of the crime find no trace. The police also investigate the alleged noise at the door that Nick claims to have heard, but it is barely audible from the bedroom. Nevertheless, nothing happens. Nick is not questioned further. Heidi is buried, and the investigation comes to nothing. Year after year, the police republish the composite sketch of the alleged perpetrator in the media. Again and again, investigators hope that a witness will come forward. But no one knows this man, and no one can provide new clues. The investigators want to question Nick again, but he refuses and begins to build a new life for himself. In 2011, he meets Rachel Watson. Just 1 year later, they marry and have 3 children over the next few years. They move into a house that Nick's parents buy for them. Nick is supposed to take care of taxes and payments. But soon, the first letters from the tax office arrive. Rachel learns that the property tax has not been paid. The house is once again facing foreclosure. So history begins to repeat itself. But this time, it's a little different. Rachel discovers a foreclosure notice hidden in Nick's sock drawer. Nick has lied to her repeatedly. About expenses, about seemingly trivial things. But now she wonders if he has also lied about bigger things. For example, about the death of his first wife. Rachel begins secretly recording conversations with him. In one of these recordings, she tells him that she could live with it if it were just the lies. But it's about Heidi. She explains to him that his behavior has destroyed her trust and that she is no longer sure if she can believe anything he says. In 2018, Rachel files for divorce. Rachel's doubts do not remain without consequences. In 2019, investigator Sergeant Nicole Sipes takes over the case. She goes through all the files again and has the old emergency call recordings analyzed technically. The evaluation shows that no other voice can be heard in the background. There is no evidence of a third person present or of a struggle. The FBI is also called in. Ballistic tests and a 3D model of the crime scene reveal that the shot that hit Heidi was fired from shoulder height and with clear aim. This makes the theory of an accidental discharge during a struggle increasingly unlikely. Nick had claimed that the perpetrator was wearing gloves and therefore left no DNA behind. But this explanation no longer convinces anyone. Investigators now suspect that Nick deliberately staged a break-in scenario to cover up what really happened. Nick Firkus is therefore arrested in May 2021. The prosecution is convinced that he shot Heidi because she was about to find out everything. The eviction was scheduled to take place the next day. Heidi would have learned that she was not the victim of identity theft, but that her husband had been lying to her for years. According to the indictment, Nick wanted to prevent his painstakingly constructed image as a loving husband, committed church member, and helpful friend from being destroyed at all costs. So he shot Heidi and staged a break-in. The crime scene speaks for itself. The door shows signs of damage, but not enough to open it. The house is messy, but not ransacked. From the FBI's point of view, everything indicates that the shot was fired deliberately. The fact that Nick claims Heidi ran ahead into the garage while he followed her with a loaded gun is also illogical. In the emergency call, Heidi sounds tense, but not panicked. And that's despite the fact that, according to Nick's own version of events, he was wrestling with the intruder over the gun at that point. Investigators also point out that Nick's job in carpet and upholstery cleaning taught him how to cover up traces. Nothing at the crime scene suggests to them that this was a coincidence. Nick's trial begins in January 2023. He is initially charged with second-degree murder and ultimately with first-degree murder. The defense sticks to the story of the break-in. They claim that Heidi knew about the impending eviction and was not worried. The blame lies with an unknown perpetrator, but the jury sees it differently. After 11 days of trial, Nick Firkus is found guilty on February 10th, 2023. He is sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. When the verdict is announced, Nick again protests his innocence. He says, "I will maintain my innocence of this crime until my last breath." His family also publicly stands behind him. They continue to believe that he was wrongfully convicted. But for the jury, the investigators, the prosecution, and above all for Heidi's family, the case is clear. After more than 13 years of investigation, they believe that Heidi's murderer is finally in prison. At least there is some justice, although even that cannot ease their pain over the loss of Heidi. That brings us to the end of today's video. What do you think about today's case? Did Nick murder his wife, or could it be something else? Feel free to write your opinion in the comments. By doing so, you'll also be supporting this channel. If a video receives a lot of interaction shortly after being uploaded, it's more likely to be recommended to people who haven't subscribed to Insolito yet. Other than that, there's not much else to say. I wish you a good morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on when you're watching the video. I hope to see you again in the next video. Until then, ciao everyone.